On the 18th of October 1883, Wharncliffe Carlton Colliery suffered a disaster that saw the loss of life for 20 men and boys. Wharncliffe Carlton Colliery in Barnsley was operational from around 1878 until 1910. It was where the commercial waste for Barnsley Council is now kept, in the industrial area above Smithies Lane and east of Whitbourne Close. It was owned by R. Craik and Company until 1893, where it was owned by J.J. Eady until its closure in 1910. Wharncliffe Carlton Colliery had 4 shafts. 2 downcast shafts, 1 upcast and 1 for pumping. It worked the Barnsley seam and John Slack was the manager. There were a few deaths before the accident on the 18th of October 1883, owing to various incidents such as roof falls, etc. That was the nature, however, of coal mining. It was a notoriously dangerous job. Whilst this wasn't known as a very gassy pit, and gas was a huge problem for pits, it was to be a problem on the 18th of October 1883. There were 25 people working the night shift at the time, although there were only 20 people in the lower section of the pit, which was known as the dip. This is the area where the explosion occurred that killed all 20 men and boys who were working there. It's never been discovered what truly caused the explosion, but it most certainly was a gas explosion. The explosion occurred close to midnight on the 18th of October 1883, and while the remaining workers attempted to restore ventilation to the shaft, it wasn't until the 21st were any bodies recovered. It was also discovered on the 21st that there was another fire burning in the pit. Although attempts were made to extinguish it, ultimately there was another explosion on the 22nd. Although this only resulted in a few injuries, thankfully, whereas of course the one on the 18th was much deadlier. Of the 20 men and boys who lost their lives, the youngest was only 14 years old, a boy named James Flatney. The oldest was a 65-year-old man named George Egley. In order to put out the fires, the mines had to be flooded. In fact, following the second explosion, the pumping shaft was putting so much water into the pit that it was out of operation for weeks. This flooding, however, meant that only 17 of the 20 bodies could be recovered. A subsequent inquiry revealed, or at least purported, that the explosion may have been caused by a falling rock, which would have released gas, and it could have been then ignited by a faulty lamp. There was no evidence of malpractice, negligence or intentional damage, and all the checks had been done. As the inquiry said, some lamps are just faulty. Nonetheless, it is a real tragedy that this short-lived pit was quite forgotten, and that its only real legacy is this disaster.